Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the May 5th, 2020 Virtual Council Workshop, followed by our virtual Village Council meeting. Pursuant to Executive Order 2069, issued by Governor DeSantis, municipalities may now conduct meetings of their governing boards without having a quorum of its members present physically or at any specific location and utilizing communications media technology such as telephonic or video conferencing as provided by section 120.54 parens 5 sub b sub 2 of the Florida statutes. The meeting will be opened with a moment of silence. Shall we start with our moment of silence, please? Thank you. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Now I'm going to call the roll. Vice Mayor Birch.
Present.
Councilman Brady.
Present.
Councilman Meltz.
Present.
Councilman Stephen Lafredo.
Here.
Very good, thank you. For this May 5th, 2020 virtual council workshop and meeting, the Miami Shores Village Council is convening by Zoom as posted in the village's public notice, which also identifies how the public may view, listen, and participate in the meeting. Please note this meeting is being recorded. The agenda and all supporting documentation are available on the village's website. In order to ensure the public has had the ability to view and listen to the meeting, the village is broadcasting the meeting through all the usual communication channels that are provided when a village council meeting is held fully in council chambers at Village Hall. This includes live streaming via the village website, Facebook, Instagram, Nextdoor, Public Stuff, YouTube, and Twitter channels. Additionally, the meeting is also available on Comcast Channel 77 and YouTube the day after the council meeting. You may also listen to the live meeting by calling the dedicated Zoom phone line as indicated in the public notice. We will now move to public comments, but I have to make some comments first. To provide a reasonable opportunity for public comments, the village has encouraged the public to submit written comments prior to the start of the meeting using the village's new e-comment function. The village clerk will read e-comments into the record. Please note, as the providing officer, I may exercise authority to limit the length of time of public comments in the interest of time and to preserve decorum and order. Please note, public comments is not a Q&A forum. Therefore, if you have questions, please contact individual council members and or staff prior to or after the meeting. However, all comments will be included as part of the official record for both virtual meetings and will be considered by the village council prior to any action being taken. All interested parties are required to abide by state, county, and local emergency orders and are urged to remain at home and practice social distancing. If the proposition is being continued or rescheduled, the opportunity to be heard may be at such a later date before the village council takes action on such proposition. So with that, Madam Clerk, we will begin our workshop. And our first item of business, we'll start with the e-comments, correct?
Correct, Madam Mayor.
All right, Madam Clerk.
As a lifelong resident of Miami Shores and a very professional, mind you, this is an anonymous member of the public who submitted this comment. As a lifelong resident of Miami Shores and a professional very conversant in the legal and financial fields, I was totally taken aback when a neighbor called me to ask my opinion of the Miami Shores Village Council considering the establishment of an emergency loan fund for the benefit of businesses located on Northeast 2nd Avenue in Miami Shores. This idea is fraught with major potential real problems, some of which are detailed below. The village has no rational reason to begin loaning any business funds from the village treasury to subsidize them with village funds so that hopefully they may survive the economic crisis that we all find ourselves in due to COVID-19 pandemic. To do so would be blatant fiscal irresponsibility by the village council and village administration. The village does not have anyone on staff that is conversant in underwriting loans to investigate the financial viability of the borrower and its owners, loan administration, and the legal drafting of loan documents, all of which are above the village administration's and village council's pay grade. Thus, the village would have to hire, at the village's expense, accounting, financial, and legal professionals to underwrite the financial viability of each business and their owners, and draft the appropriate legal loan documents and administer the proposed emergency loan program, a potential total nightmare. The thrust of Councilman Lafredo's March 17, 2020 memo proposal was to assist the 2 new and large restaurants that opened up on Northeast 2nd Avenue within the past year, which were slated to receive up to $100,000 of the proposed $300,000 to $400,000 of the proposed emergency loan fund requested by Councilman Lafredo. When one considers that the industry that has the highest failure rate for new businesses in its industry is the restaurant industry, this would be a fiscal irresponsible thing for the village of Miami Shores to consider to do, especially for 2 new restaurants who have been in business for less than 1 year. Even if the proposed village emergency loan was personally guaranteed by the owners of the business, the corporate entity could file bankruptcy and the owners could also file personal bankruptcy to wipe the loan amount out totally and completely. The homes of the owners of the corporate entity would be safeguarded from the debtors under current bankruptcy laws. In other words, the personally guaranteed loan documents of the business may become totally worthless if both the corporate entity and the owners file for protection under current bankruptcy law. Personal guarantees are only as good as the person behind those personal guarantees. I would ask the village council members to add their personal guarantees to these loan documents. The members of the village council are so confident that the loans will be repaid in total by the business entities and their owners. Put your money where your vote is. If no takers, no problem, just vote no. The village of Miami Shores is not a lending institution. There are no guarantees in life except for death and taxes. The village manager stated during the April 21st, 2020 village council meeting that the village only has $5 million currently in cash reserves in case it is needed and during the immediate future for 3 of the next 6 months. The village would need to draw down approximately $4 million of that $5 million of cash reserves to cover normal recurring village expenditures. That equates to 80% of the village's current cash reserves will be used to cover normal operating costs of the village over to the next 6 months. The village does not have an excess of $300,000 or $400,000 to loan out to anyone, period. The village manager also stated the April 21st, 2020 village council meeting that the 80% of the current village cash reserves that is required to cover normal costs to operate the village over the next 6 months does not take into consideration money required by the village to clean up after a hurricane. Since the year's hurricane season begins June 1, 2020, approximately 30 days from now. Nobody knows how many hurricanes will impact the village of Miami Shores during the 2020 hurricane season. The financial exposure of hurricanes to the village in the 2020, 2021, 2022 hurricane seasons is unknown. Unless the village is very careful of how the monies set aside for an emergency loan fund are distributed to the various corporate entities on Northeast 2nd Avenue, the village will subject themselves to potential litigation by those who did not receive a loan from the emergency loan fund based upon race, gender, and whatever other superfluous reasons that are conjured up by the plaintiffs for an entity to sue the village if they did not receive their fair share of the emergency loan fund. A legal nightmare in the making for sure. You can bet on that. If a village resident, patron, or customer of any of the corporate entities located in Miami Shores or members of the village council want to subsidize any corporate entity, then a viable alternative would be to set up a GoFundMe site for the corporate entities, and those who want to subsidize a specific entity can do so on that entity's GoFundMe site out of their own pockets, not with our tax dollars. Village tax dollars are not to be used to subsidize select corporate entities, while other corporate entities located in Miami Shores Village get no funds whatsoever. The Village Council and the residents of Miami Shores are not co-owners or partners in these corporate entities. We do not share in the profits of these entities, and therefore our tax dollars should not be used to keep them afloat or in business. We as a nation find ourselves in a very precarious medical, economic, and financial situation with this COVID-19 pandemic and its horrific impact. None of us know for certain whether our livelihoods or lives will continue as they were prior to January 1, 2020. It is a very uncertain time we currently live in. I have many clients who were forced to shut their doors by local government and are not reopening their businesses and will be filing for protection under our bankruptcy laws. Others, due to social distancing, such as restaurants, will not have the capacity and number of customers that can dine in their establishments, and the related revenues will be less than what they had prior to the pandemic once they are allowed to reopen their doors, even though their fixed costs such as rent will not decrease at all. Still others, due to social distancing and working out their home offices, are considering divorce due to the strain of dealing with their spouses 24/7 and the stress of the complete disruption in their lives, both personal and business. A few people that I know are at their wits' end as they do not know where their next meal is coming from since they live paycheck to paycheck and are now unemployed. I would urge the Village Council to not do anything about this matter at all or put it to a public vote in a special election and let your constituents decide. In these uncertain times, there are more serious matters to consider other than the bailout of businesses along Northeast 2nd Avenue. What about the 2020-2021 village budget and the 2020 hurricane season? What about our survival period? Madam Mayor, this concludes public comments for the workshop.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Our first discussion item, would you like to read item 5A, Sally, into the...
Yes, Madam Mayor. Discussion regarding the establishment of an emergency loan fund program for businesses in Miami Shores. This item is sponsored by Councilman Stephen Lafredo.
Mr. Lafredo?
Let me unmute. Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a proposal that I made first on March 17th. By the way, before we go forward, are we entertaining anonymous letters as part of our public forum now? Is that procedure?
Where?
How do I respond to an anonymous letter? I don't know who wrote the letter. That's my concern.
Once we opened it up for public comments, I'm not aware that we can require people to identify themselves. We generally ask them when they're in the room if they'll state their name and address, but it has been submitted as a public comment. Normally, we don't respond during council meetings or workshops to the public comments. It's not a question and answer, but you can feel free to address any of the topics raised.
Well, what I'm saying is it's very difficult to debate with an anonymous person and a person that wants to hold the council accountable for their actions, but doesn't feel strong enough about their own convictions to put their name behind what they're stating. I'm not saying I disagree completely with everything they've said, but it's very concerning. Are we setting a new precedent here where we're going to allow in the future from here on out public comments to be anonymous and to be submitted via email? Is that where we're going with this?
I don't know any way you can prevent the submission of an anonymous letter with a request that it be included as part of public comment. I guess you could just not read it at the meeting, but once it's received by the village, it's a public record. Can't be destroyed.
Okay, I understand. All right, well, what I'll do then, I've reviewed everything. I don't know, I'll take a sense of the council. Do you want to go through all this? Because I've reviewed the village manager's memorandum, I reviewed the vice mayor's memorandum and the council meeting minutes, and I've also reviewed the proposed agenda for the next meeting, which comes right after this. So I don't want to waste everybody's time with a futile gesture. Everybody's had a chance to read all the memos. And what I'd like to suggest, if there's no sense on the council in going forward with the emergency loan program, let's just go move ahead to other matters, because this is a collegial thing. I was working together with you all, or intended to work together with you all. And if no one is interested in pursuing the program any further other than myself, there's no point in pursuing it any further. Although the only thing I would say in my defense is, when there are people that are suffering, just because you can't help everybody doesn't mean you shouldn't try and help somebody. But if that's not the case, if this is viewed as some other kind of power grab or unauthorized use of power, I certainly don't want to do that. So at this point, I would suggest that if there's no other interest in the council in supporting the emergency loan program, that we simply move on to the vice mayor's proposal.
I think Vice Mayor Birch would like to make some comment. Vice Mayor Birch, you had your hand up?
I would like to ask Lisa Keeley, who's doing the IT, if she can do anything about the imposition of the commenter that we have, or that I'm able to see. And I think Mr. Benton is seeing also. Is there anything that can be done about that, Lisa? Is Lisa there? Isabella, do you know if Lisa was going to stay for the meeting, or?
Hi, I'm here. Sorry. They've been removed from the attending. They violated the rules of the Zoom meeting, so they've been removed.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. And the comment I was going to make, Madam Mayor, is sometimes at this sort of juncture, you can, it would be fine if you asked for a poll of, after everything we've learned and heard and identified here as the matter at hand, if there is a reason to go forward by 3 votes.
Okay, but before, I just want to make sure if those among us, our other councilmen, if they want to make any further comment, I wanted to avail them of that opportunity before we take a straw poll. Does anyone have any comment to make with regard to Councilman Lafredo's most recent iteration of his proposal? Okay, well then I'm going to make just a couple of quick comments. I just want to say, I know that it's clear that everybody on this council wants to find a way to help our residents and our business owners. And this may go on for some time trying to act quickly, but I think that acting rationally will only make our ability to come out of this crisis much more difficult. I want to take a moment to thank the manager and the staff for putting together this extensive work in such a short time to give us some facts and some details and some numbers so that we are able to make an educated decision. I think after reading for me, just speaking for me, after reading the manager's memo, it makes it clear that moving forward with this item, while popular with some of our residents, it would be irresponsible, not in the best interest of the village as a whole. We just can't, we're tasked with holding the sacred tax dollars of our residents, and I want to make sure that we're thinking of the village as a whole. But I also want to say that I want to thank Councilman Lafredo for opening up the discussion and at least having it. I know where your heart was and is, and I think we're all there, but I think it's responsible. We have to act responsibly going forward. And given what the manager laid out in so much detail, I don't think that this is the route that we're going to, in my opinion, the route that should be taken going forward, because we don't know what this is going to look like on the other side when we come out of this crisis. So those are just some quick comments that I would make. If nobody else has comments, we can move on to our next item. But first, let's take a straw poll. Do we have anyone, those in favor or who would like to continue this discussion with regard to Mr. Lafredo's proposal, please raise their hand. Those who are opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Item 5. Sorry, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Discussion regarding the establishment of a Miami Shores Village rent forgiveness rebate program. This item is sponsored by Vice Mayor Alice Birch.
Vice Mayor Birch.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to say to Mr. Lafredo that I was opposed to the concept of loans, and so having taken that position myself personally, not that I don't feel that you did a very kind thing by bringing this up for as an idea. actually worked with the village attorney early on. It's almost 10 days ago now. And he put together what I think is a solid background and framework for providing rent relief that is not terribly onerous. But then on the other hand, we've been talking about money and what we have remaining to go through the end of the year. All those considerations put together by the manager, as well as I'm sure that my fellow councilmen have some concerns about, even though it's well crafted, how it would be carried out. I still think this is if council wants to help the Second Avenue Business District and the Second Avenue Business District exclusively, then this provides a way forward. And I'm interested in your comments, not only about that, but about the other items that I brought up, one of which is already underway. And I'd like to thank Travis Kendall for making himself available to the businesses. And I have to say that I called him in a panic last Friday when a lot was going on with the payroll protection program, and he was able to help me. There was a box that needed to be filled in, and he knew exactly what I should put there, and it was a big help. So I was appreciative, and then I, of course, went forward with the knowledge that any small business can avail themselves of that great resource. So I will be quiet because I said a lot in my memo, and listen to any comments that you'd like to have.
Councilman Lafredo?
Was out sick today, so I didn't get back to the village attorney. I'm getting tested tomorrow, so I woke up with a sore throat today, so that's where I'm at physically. I believe that since I'm a tenant in my business on 2nd Avenue, that I must disqualify and recuse myself from this discussion, because even though I don't know how this program is going to turn out, there is a possibility, if rents come back down, that I may get some personal benefit in my law practice. So at this point, in an abundance of caution, I'm going to recuse myself from any further discussion of this issue. I think you all know how I feel about it, but I can't say any more or I'll get myself in trouble. So just let's say that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Vice Mayor Birch?
But Mr. Lafredo, did you have an opinion on the other items on that list, which would be a downtown celebration?
I think it would be better if I reserve any comments I might have to council comments to be safe. I don't want, I got the anonymous letter, and I don't want to have somebody accusing me of something. And so in an abundance of caution, I'm going to step aside.
Okay. Okay. Do any other council members have any comments with regard to the establishment of a rent forgiveness rebate program? But Councilman Meltz?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I wanted to thank you, Vice Mayor Birch, for spending the time with the village attorney to go through this. It's quite thorough. However, being just a regular person from Boston, I need a little bit of help to understand the nuts and bolts of it, if you would. So the monies, the $85,000 would ordinarily come into the city coffers at what point?
When taxes are paid, subsequent to the taxes being paid.
November, December, January timeframe?
Right,
and that would go into our general fund. It's not being appropriated to any specific causes or expenses as of now.
It is going to specific expenses. It's earmarked for maintenance of the sewer system that serves the downtown area.
Okay.
And currently, those expenses are being funded by the village. It was set up as part of when we passed the downtown area sewer project ordinance. It was always contemplated that eventually the maintenance expenses would be borne by the people benefiting from the sewers, the downtown property owners.
This is the first time that it's payable.
Actually, it's not payable yet. There's an ordinance that will be coming up, I believe, next meeting, Isabelle, is that right?
That's correct.
To put it on the tax bill starting this year.
All right. So then, Tom?
Unmute, Tom.
Actually, the way this was set up, we are charging them a very nominal fee right now. It's like $200 a year because the system was under warranty. The warranty has since run out as of last year, I believe. So we now have to start charging the property owners the actual cost that we're bearing now for the maintenance of the system.
Okay. So it's not in our current budget as a revenue source, but it will be in next year's budget.
All right, Holly?
Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. So, and the reason why I say this, Vice Mayor Birch, I'm just trying to understand. This isn't like found money. This is money that it would be in the general revenue, or it would be something that we would have to. We're going to pay for it no matter what, right? This isn't. It's not a grant. It's not a new revenue fund which doesn't have a corresponding expense. We would be $85,000 short. So however, which pot it comes from or where it's allocated, it's still the village paying the downtown property owners $85,000. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, and what I just want to point out that one of the reasons that it came to my mind is that in a conversation with the manager, he mentioned that he planned on deferring he was thinking about the possibility, and I don't want to misquote you, Mr. Benton. He was thinking about the possibility of deferring the payment this year because of the hardship on the landlords on those buildings. So I thought, well, he's planning for the rest of the year to do without the money, so perhaps it would be a place that we could plan for the expense. And so your point is well taken. It is money that would otherwise be a positive for the village.
Okay, and I don't want to monopolize time, and I don't want to be the fly in the ointment, but I just want everybody who's listening and watching, I want everybody to understand that where this is coming from, because you've done a ton of work, and there's two things. One, I'm not quite sure how it's in the administration of it would go, that the tenants would have to pay their rents and then the building owners would have to show proof to the village to get a rebate, or because, I mean, trust is an issue. So
can I address that?
Please.
All right. The way it was crafted, I want to make 2 points. One, the $85,000 number is the maximum exposure, depending on if everybody applies. But the way it's crafted is if this passes, then starting tomorrow, a landlord could say, hey, I'm in a position where if I give you, I don't know, let's pick a number, $1,000 rent credit, Mr. Tenant, I can get that money back after I pay my taxes. So it incentivizes the giving of the rent credit now. And then he can recoup it later. It's the money does not flow directly to the tenants. It goes to the landlord, but the landlord and the tenant have to submit within 90 days of this passing affidavits that they've either given rent credits or they've committed irrevocably to give rent credits in X dollar amount.
Okay.
And then they get reimbursed for that once they pay their taxes.
How many building owners are we talking about?
Tom had a list.
Approximately 24.
24. And Tom, have you had any dialogue with building owners about this issue?
No, sir, I'm not.
So it's not as if you have 20 people say, I'm all in, I'm ready to give my tenants a rebate or to forgive rent or
No.
anything like that?
No, sir, I have not done any work on this particular item.
Okay. And Vice Mayor Birch, the only other thing, which playing the devil's advocate, is that we're treating Second Avenue differently than we're treating the rest of the village, right? In terms of other business owners. It's similar, and I guess the answer, and I'll let you expound upon it, but the answer is because we have an idea for Second Avenue, we don't have an idea maybe for the rest of the village how to help out other businesses. So if you could just help me out on that.
Yes. Oh, that is really rather easy thing to help you with, because first of all, it's outlined well in the whereas clauses. You begin to have a sense that there is a built-in relationship between Miami Shores Village and these landlords, or we would not have a sewer system. And the sewer system is the item that took us really over 30 years to put together. So we have that built-in relationship. We have put our own, as the village entity, we have put our own money into it. The idea of leveraging our Miami Shores Village $5 million investment is a very important one. And so I thought that dovetailed quite nicely into the fact that we all own the sewer system together. And there is no other common, with the exception of the country club, there is no other common thread that ties the village together with a business district. Neither Biscayne Boulevard, nor Park Drive, nor wherever you go, nor home offices, none of those. But that one is a relationship. I thought that the language in the resolution did a good job pointing that out.
And I appreciate that, Vice Mayor Birch. I think that was very well spoken. And I can just say, traditionally, the building owners are not very responsive. And somebody can debate me on that as much as you want. But over the years, my experience with downtown, right? Okay, so I'm looking at it for potential exposure or financial limits, and as Mr. Serafin said, it's a maximum of $85,000. That's if all the chips fall where they're supposed to fall, and if everybody does what they're supposed to do, that's the maximum that we wouldn't have in our revenues come the payment of those taxes next November, December, January. Is that a fair estimation?
Correct. We don't know, and it could be a lot less than $85,000. There are risks, of course, but and there are risks of impacting revenues when we should come up terribly short during this era, and I know that. But I was taking the spirit of the door that was opened and trying to figure out a reasonable way to help the downtown district.
Okay. And in closing, based on the historical partnership of the village and the property downtown, as well as the nexus, as you have explained, I would be in favor of this, and I appreciate you answering the questions so eloquently.
Thank you. Very nice. Okay. Well, it's nice to hear that.
Councilman Brady, do you have any comments, questions?
Excuse me. Thank you for all the explanations so far. I do think this is really well thought through. I did want to understand, I'm looking at the, in Exhibit A, the item number 2, where it starts getting into tax year 2022. I was wondering if you could help me understand why it's why more than just tax year 2021.
The short answer is not enough money if we just do one tax year. I believe that's how we get to the 80 some odd thousand, that's the total of both tax years. And we've done it so they could front load, give all of the rent credit now, and then get it back over the 2-year period when they pay this coming taxes and then when they pay the next year's taxes. It's just a way of getting more money in the system. You could certainly change that.
Let me clarify something, if I may.
Yeah, that's not right.
It's 85,000 a year.
Oh, okay. So
that's what it said in the chart.
Yeah, it's even more then. So the total exposure over a 2-year period is 85,000 a year. So it's really potentially $170,000 program. 170,000.
That's an item the council could consider. If you would like to redraft and include only 1 year, then that would at least be something. It might come out to a very small amount if the tenant had the landlord had a lot of tenants, but I was trying to bolster it to make it a little bit more of a meaningful rent relief. And especially since we're emphasizing that it would be given now, they could look toward being more generous with their tenants if they wish to.
And sorry, I just had one last comment. It would seem to me so is I don't not to be searching, for problems, but it is the fundamental assumption that the current tenants would be evicted because there are other, people that would possibly be wanting to rent that space right now, even though the current people that are in there would not be able to make their rent. I mean, is that? I'm just trying to make sure I understand which problem we're trying to address here. I mean, is there a belief that there are tenants that would be evicted by these landlords because there are a line of other people ready to move in there and pay the rent?
Councilman Brady, I want to answer that because I heard a little bit about, emotions enter into landlord-tenant relationships. And if you want to have a good relationship with your landlord, you pay your rent and you pay it on time. And that is the very important element to that relationship. So there are folks who have restaurants in downtown buildings or maybe there are just regular tenants who have other places that they rent. And they are feeling, when you say to them, say, for example, the courts are closed for evictions right now, so you're safe. You can stay where you are. They are having the feeling that they're squatters in a place that they can ill afford to go forward with, knowing that they don't have the full rent. So it's more like that situation than, oh, wait a minute, there's a long line of people, you get out. That's not the factor. I really felt the factor of a responsible tenant who is threatened by the situation.
If I may, opinions vary on what the real estate market's going to look like on the other side of this. But if you assume, as I do, that it's going to be very difficult to get new tenants in, the lack of new tenants clamoring to get into this property should make the landlords more willing to work with the tenants. This additional incentive, while on its own, might not make the difference between the landlord making his mortgage and not making the mortgage. It's an additional incentive to help push the landlords to work with the tenants. Mm-hmm. So the way I see it, to answer your question, is it should, if it works the way it's intended, it should help out the tenants to give them more breathing room. It should help out the landlords because they'll be able to keep more of their existing tenants and get some money back rebated when they pay their taxes. That'll help them pay their mortgages, help them pay the rest of their taxes. So if it works the way it's intended, the rising tide should help to lift all boats.
I know. Thank you, Vice Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Attorney. I just want to make sure we weren't providing a misincentive to that negotiation, that relationship. So thank you.
The alternative, if we do nothing, it could certainly be tenants not being able to afford their rent, tenants either leaving voluntarily or being evicted, property owners struggling to pay their mortgages. It's not a pretty picture.
Okay. I think Mr. Meltz asked a lot of the questions that I had written down. Thank you, Vice Mayor Birch, for this document. It's well thought through, and that is greatly appreciated. But I have a couple of questions under Exhibit A, sub 3A. No, I'm sorry, A1. It says within 90 days of village adoption of this program. Are we, and I'm not sure what the protocol is here, but if we were to do this, is staff, the village manager, going to reach out and let them know that this program is here? How will we let's not assume everybody knows this is happening. How will we get word out to the landlords that this is an option?
I think Mr. Benton has an idea that he would send a letter and share this development with them and make them aware. And that way they would certainly have all the rules for carrying out the program right there.
The chamber can help.
Okay. Well, have we asked the chamber to help?
We don't have a program yet.
Okay.
The chamber put this this agenda item out to their membership, I know, today. So yes. Mm-hmm.
And the chamber put that out to their membership with the understanding that this is as it relates specifically to Northeast Second?
Well, it's outlined in the, if they read it.
I just want to be real clear.
Yes.
I have concerns about
and
that.
My memo specifically, it goes with the memo, so it specifically states that. And I know that that they did extend that out to the membership. So
awesome. And then under item 6, any false or misleading representation by any landlord or tenant in any application submitted under this program may be punished in accordance with law. With the law. What law?
There's actually a section of the village code that makes it a criminal offense to make a false or misleading statement in any application to the village for anything.
Okay. All right. It wasn't cited here. So
Great
I wanted
question.
to make sure.
I was hoping someone would ask.
I wanted to make sure that we had the actual teeth to do it.
Yeah, it's been there forever. That
Okay,
section.
very good. Very good. And you'll let us know what section that is, Mr. Serafin, when we have a moment. Okay. Those are my questions. My other questions were already answered. Mr. Meltz.
Following up on Councilman Brady's question about the term, Vice Mayor Birch, 85,000 for 1 year or 85,000 for 2 years. What are we? Do we have clarification on that? So, are you open to $85,000 maximum this year and possibly a renewable second year? I'm more comfortable knowing this is a 1 year commitment, and then we can assess what's going on rather than creating our exposure of $170,000 in revenue.
So the problem with that is, of course, immediate relief. That was my concern to begin with when at the last meeting, Mr. Serafin was saying, okay, that would be contingent upon when they have to pay the tax by and the timing. So if we are to offer up to $170,000, that would benefit in the immediate term. And I'm not sure how many landlords would take up that measure and would be willing to advance that amount of rent relief, which is double in the sense of $170,000. So really, we're saying, how many landlords out there would take a future credit for up to $6,000 and relieve the rent for their tenants? And that's anyone's guess. I have absolutely no idea, but I don't think there would be that many of them. If there of the 24 of them, how many of them would do that? I mean, given the background of what you know, having been on council during the sewer negotiation thing, what would you think? It's a matter of conjecture.
I think if I'm not understanding it clearly, though, it's if everybody does participate, though, then it is a total cost of $170,000. I think. Are you saying that you don't think it would get to that?
That's my.
But what's the difference then? What's the difference then when making it renewable? Like, would that make a building owner not participate because we're only saying it's $85,000 for 1 year and then we'll decide next year?
Mr. Serafin?
Yeah,
I don't understand.
The idea is the way I structured it in the proposal, they can give 2 years worth of rent concessions in the next 90 days. To me, that was more bang for the buck. If you give them 1 year's, Tom, what are we assuming is the average annual maintenance assessment amount?
It's 3,200 or something.
Yeah, so
2,120.
okay, let's call it give or take $3,000. If we do it year by year, by the time we do the second year, these tenants likely will either have given up and left or have made other arrangements. I don't see the utility, and again, it's a policy decision for you all, but I don't see the utility in putting off till much later a decision on whether or not to essentially double it. And it was just driven by the numbers. If we give them 2 years now and commit to it, then they can commit and give their tenants $6,000 worth of rent relief in the next 90 days instead of $3,000. And it's a pure policy decision.
I think what you should have said to me is why aren't you getting this, stupid? Because if we're looking at it in January, hopefully all this is over, and why would it matter at that point for them to give rent relief? The rent relief is needed now, and you're increasing the ability to help both the business owners and allow the property owners to help them now. That's what you should have said to me.
I wish I'd said that.
I think I get it. But the second other issue is it limited on and there's not that many, but stores that are company owned? In other words,
it's not limited at all by stores. It's purely landlord by landlord, property owners. Property owner pays the maintenance assessment. He can get up to the full amount of that assessment rebated after he pays it.
Does anybody want to discuss limiting this to non-company owned stores?
I can give you my perspective on why I didn't try to build that in, aside from the obvious practical problems. At that point, what you're doing is you're picking winners and losers. And I'd rather, frankly, leave it up to the landlords who know their tenants and know who's struggling and who's not, and let them pick the winners and losers.
I'm not quite sure it affects more than 2 or 3 company-owned stores. There's franchises, but those are not company-owned. The franchises are hardworking folks, and that's different.
Remember, we're not granting any tenant the right to a rent concession. What we're trying to do is put the landlords in a position where they can grant the tenants rent concessions. And
we wouldn't have control over that.
I could see a landlord saying, hey, look, I'd rather give the money, more of the money, to the people who are struggling the worst because they're the ones I'm likely to lose if I don't help.
Okay.
Councilman Brady?
I just have one last question. I just want to make sure I understand the mechanics. Thank you for the explanation. So the idea would be you would have to come with a lease that was executed in the past, before the date set in here saying this was my rent. And then you would have to come and show that there was an adjustment made. And then the maximum amount of rebate would be the difference between that was realized. So if they had 3 months of reduced rent, right, and then completely just left, that the tax rebate here would be that difference for those 3 months between what the lease had been and what the adjustment that was made here.
We call it a rent concession. Any reduction in the rent is the rent concession, and you can get a rebate for the rent concessions that you grant in accordance with these terms. Mm-hmm. Once you've paid your tax up to the amount of the maintenance assessment.
Okay, thank you.
It was not easy to draft.
Is there any further discussion? Any other questions? Mr. Manager.
Yes, I was just looking at some of the documents here. I just want to be clear, in our proposal, the next year's sewer maintenance will have a 3% increase in it. So the actual total will be 173,548. I just wanted to just make sure that you all have that number.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any other discussion? Again, thank you, Vice Mayor Birch, for your thoughtful item, and I'm glad that everybody was asking questions and trying to get questions answered. If there's no further discussion, this will conclude our council workshop. The virtual council meeting will start momentarily. Please remember to click on the council meeting live stream link to view the live event. And thank you all for participating in this workshop, and we'll see you back here in 6:30 in very short order. Thank you. This workshop is adjourned.